South Carolina does not want and cannot afford the president's health care plan. Not now, not ever.
Oh, do they hate Obamacare in South Carolina? So much so that conservative lawmakers right now, right there, are rushing to beat the clock this week to try and make sure the state Senate passes a law, which the state House has already passed by an overwhelming margin, that would make South Carolina the first state in the country to essentially nullify the Affordable Care Act. Joining me now, Avik Roy, senior fellow at the Manhattan Institute, author of The Apothecary, the Forbes blog on healthcare and entitlement reform. He's also a former member of Mitt Romney's Healthcare Policy Advisory Group. And my good friend Ezra Klein, MSNBC policy analyst and columnist for The Washington Post. Avik, I want to start with you. You're of the school that Republicans should get off the nullification train. They should stop voting a million times to repeal Obamacare, actually work on reforming the bill to make it a better bill, a more conservative bill. What is your reaction? You're a wonk in this space. When you see what the grassroots politics of this looks like in South Carolina, do you just throw it like no one is listening to you, I guess is my point.
I like to think some people are listening to me. I don't think they're listening to me. It's silly and it's embarrassing, really. I mean, I think nullification in particular, I mean, you know, that was settled a long time ago. Whether you think there should be nullification or not, you know, it seems like it's a complete waste of time. And there really are important, as you said, important problems for businesses here. So if you're a business in South Carolina, you're putting yourself in legal jeopardy. Why, if you're a responsible government, would you want to put businesses in a situation where they're going to face litigation risk over something like this?
And we talk about regulatory uncertainty all the time. Regulatory uncertainty was a big bugaboo on the campaign trail, and it's a real thing. I mean, you want to have some certainty as a business, and passing this would create a lot of that. Ezra, you've written obviously a ton about the politics of this, and particularly about the politics of Medicaid expansion. I want to get to in a second. But are you surprised by the enduring power of this kind of resistance to the law? Because I think you and I have had a million conversations about which way this was going to go after the Supreme Court said, okay, this is the law of the land. And I'm curious if this is going the way you thought it would in terms of how powerful and enduring the resistance seems.
Shortly after the law passed, I didn't think the resistance would be this enduring. By the time the Supreme Court ruled on the law, absolutely. I mean, by that point, you'd had a conservative movement that convinced itself that an individual mandate that it came up with a decade or so before was now a deeply unconstitutional assault on the very foundations of our liberty. And once you do that, once you reframe the discussion in such apocalyptic terms, not should we have an individual mandate or open enrollment or some other kind of Medicare Part D-like penalty, but are we going to have a free country any longer? Will there be any limits on federal power, or will the state simply run roughshod over the freedoms of the people? Then you've set the stage in which people can't back down. The things they have committed themselves, the things they have convinced themselves of, are too severe for them to back down from the underlying philosophical position they've taken is simply too difficult, and that breeds this kind of radicalism.
And so here's the thing that might make them back down, particularly in one aspect of the bill, which is Medicaid expansion, right? Mm-hmm. Because of the other part of that Supreme Court decision, the states have the option of opting into the Medicaid expansion for mostly the working poor, and it's expanded version of Medicaid, right, eligibility, or not. And we've seen a lot of states opt out. The RAND Corporation has a new study showing that states that opt out of Medicaid expansion will lose access to billions of federal dollars. Loss in federal dollars, about $8.4 billion. Increased state spending will be about $1 billion. So it's looking like a accounting disaster. Do you think this is going to change over time, or do you think that is going to endure as well, Avik?
I think it depends on the future. I mean, I think certainly, as you said, there's a fiscal temptation there for states to take the money, even if they're philosophically opposed to the law. So, for example, in Ohio, in some of these other states like Arkansas, Republican governments or Republican legislatures have voted
because the money's there.
Because the money's there, and they look at it and say, we're sending our tax dollars elsewhere, and it's a powerful argument. However, in mostly these southern states, there's been a more energetic resistance. Whether that lasts over time,
depends on how well it actually depends on the implementation of the law and whether the law works out well, which is what I want to get to next, because the two of you had a really fascinating back and forth debate about what news is coming out of California as they start to set up their exchanges, the kind of the beginning of the most interesting part of Obamacare implementation. You guys had a disagreement about that, and I want you to argue that out right after we take this break.